Welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Cabral Concept. Great to have you back with me here today. Looking forward to getting into our Wellness and Weight Loss Wednesday show, where last week I said we were going to be starting a series of shows on what happens to the human body when it is missing a specific nutrient, vitamin, macronutrient, hydration, like we talked about last week. Last week on episode 1138 was, do you have these 7 surprising signs of dehydration? And that's because hydration, or basically drinking, is something most people think nothing of, because all they do is reach for that glass of water or whatever their favorite beverage of choice is only when they get thirsty. But I'm telling you right now, if you wait only to drink until you get thirsty, you are going to suffer from a lot of those signs of dehydration, many of which affect your body, your weight loss potential, or basically body transformation, your mood, and the overall quality of energy and vibrancy. So I do recommend checking out that show for the next couple of weeks. I'm going to be going through what happens when you're deficient in magnesium and B vitamins and calcium. And today's topic specifically is protein. Now, I know that sometimes I've spoken about before, and I've really talked with people the dangers of something like a carnivore diet in the long term. Nothing is really that dangerous in the short term, but let's say that you were to go on a carnivore diet for a year or so. I talked about on that show all of the different things that are going to happen within the body. I talk about the shrinkage of the gut microbiome. So really, I would love you to go back, check out that show as well. I'll see if I can find the actual number to that show as we're going through this. And it is episode 1089, stephencabral.com/1089. And the way that you can find all of these shows, the way that I find these shows as well, is simply go over to stephencabral.com/podcasts and type in something like carnivore. And that popped up episode 1089. And that was the top 10 reasons why the carnivore diet is disastrous for your long-term health. Now, I know that there's a lot of people out there saying that, but I feel fantastic on it. And I'm not saying that you don't feel fantastic on it. What I'm saying is, here's the long-term effects with getting the majority of your calories from protein. And I did a show on that called The Mounting Evidence Against Meat. And I would love for you to go back. Remember, this is from an unbiased perspective. If the carnivore diet was the way to go, you know I would be promoting the carnivore diet, because remember, I always say I'm pro people. I'm not pro a specific diet, not pro a specific exercise. None of that matters to me. That's all arbitrary. What I look at is, what have people been doing for 6,000 years of recorded medical history in Ayurvedic medicine? What have they been doing a couple thousand years with all the other not just Eastern-based, but also Western European-based forms of medicine that I've studied? What about traditional Chinese medicine, 3,000 to 4,000 years old? So what have we been doing throughout the ages? And so we look at that specifically. And even when people point to a diet that's predominantly meat-based or fish-based, one, it's not sitting down to a pound of meat. And the other is that there's long periods of fasting. And that's what we need to talk about too. You're certainly not eating meat for 3 meals a day. That's just, there's no literature out there that says, you should eat meat and you'll be healthy for 3 meals a day. Again, will you get a burst in energy? Potentially. But again, that could be because of SIBO and candida overgrowth. And it could be because you were lacking so many nutrients in your body, and that meat provided for you. So again, go back, check out that show, but also don't ever look at anything as dogma, as one thing. I don't. And that's what I need people to really think about as well. And here's why. When I bring up a specific topic, so for today, I'm actually going to be talking about what happens when you don't get enough protein. So you get people on one side and they'll be like, you don't need protein. There's enough protein in, broccoli. And I tell people, like, listen, I know broccoli has protein. I think we can agree on that. We can look at the nutritional facts. And people say, well, look how big an elephant grows, or look how big that gorilla grows. And I say, sure, but you're not eating 400 pounds of food. You're not eating all of that. You have to understand is they're eating all day long, and they're able to consume all of these nutrients because of a different digestive system as well that an herbivore would have. So what I want people to do is really take a realistic look at overall nutrition and their health, understand that humans can eat a variety of foods and they typically do well in a variety of foods. But it's really when we swing too far in one direction that we start to get unhealthy. But again, you never really get unhealthy within a week or 2 weeks and sometimes even a few months. And the younger you are, the healthier you're going to remain in the first place for most people. You know that I didn't and a lot of other people, but typically you do. It's also why it's hard to watch someone when they're 22 years old recommending a specific diet for them that got them in this type of shape or this type of health and vibrancy when they're 22 years old and they're trying to recommend it to someone that's 50 years old that's had a lot more living and they've had a lot more catabolism and breakdown of the body, a lot less sleep, a lot more stress in their life over more than twice the life that the 22-year-old has lived. Now, remember, I was a 22-year-old nutritionist and personal trainer and strength coach, and I was giving out recommendations, and I thought they were pretty good, and they weren't bad for the most part, but I'll tell you this, is that they oftentimes, it wasn't possible because they didn't have the frame of mind. How can you give a client that's 40 years old, 45 years old, you just don't have the frame of reference, the ability to understand that they might have 2 kids or 3 kids, and they might have been up for many nights in a row, and they might not be able to plan out all the things that they can, and also just all that life that they've lived, right? So you have to understand, Isaiah, I see these people out there promoting, and they're only drinking juice all day long, and that's basically all they do, and then they have like a big salad at dinner. And I say, okay, first of all, when I see that person, they're in great shape, and they look fantastic. They absolutely do. But here's the thing. They're also a kapha body type. They're an anabolic body type, and they're in their early 20s, and they look great. Don't get me wrong, fantastic. I can't deny that. And so here's the problem, though. What are they going to look like in 20 years doing that? Well, there's no way they're doing that for the next 20 years. So all I'm trying to say is this. I don't want to hate on anyone. I hate that when I see that online. I really do. I think it's crazy how people look to knock other people down trying to just build themselves up. That should not be what we're trying to do as a health-based industry. But also what I want you to understand is that anytime you deviate from what we all know to be healthy, good quality nutrition, where it goes too severe in one direction, you're always going to be wrong. And that's why I want to put this out there to the young practitioners and the old practitioners that are having people do keto-based diets for long periods of time. That means just basically super low carb or super high fat. Putting fat in every beverage you own, they're coming out with fat water. I mean, this is insane. What are we doing? I know it's just marketing and hype, but there's people out there that are actually going to be hurt by this. It's just crazy, right? And I know that you can make a lot of money doing all these things, but really, is that the way that you want to make money? It just seems really shallow to me, and I'm a big believer in karma, and I know that that will come around to anyone that does that type of thing. It might happen to them. So you don't want to do those things. You don't want to do that to other people. But here's the thing. If we go super high carb for too long for some people, they're going to have issues with blood sugar. If we go super high protein, there's going to be issues. If they go super high fat, there's going to be issues. What we need to do is create more of a balanced diet, that the predominance of the diet should be plant-based. And if you can't handle fruit and vegetables, well, then we need to look at why you can't handle them. They're not bad for you, but right now, you get bloating, you get gas. Well, check out that episode, like I said, in the carnivore diet. You might have SIBO. You likely do, which is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. You probably used antibiotics before in your life. You may have had copious amounts of alcohol. I don't know, right? May have taken birth control. All that could lead to SIBO, can lead to candida overgrowth, which would then ferment those foods as you put them in your gut. I didn't want this show to turn into this, but it is turning into this. So let's shift now. Let's move to the side and understand we're looking for a balanced diet. So people that, and I talk about a plant-based diet because that's where the real research is behind. It's behind a Mediterranean-based diet, the Nordic diet that I spoke about, predominantly coming from vegetables and some fruit in there as well. And that gives you your antioxidants, and those help to prevent cancer as well. There's no diet that says, hey, this prevents cancer as a high-fat diet. That's not true. There's no diet out there that says that. Now, if you have cancer, you can actually show shrinking of tumors by not taking in anything that would feed the tumor. But again, that's a little bit of a misnomer as well, because we know that juicing and things like that can help to shrink tumors as well. And there's also no high-protein diet that's anti-cancer. It's actually leads, what we're seeing in the research, to greater growth of tumors and cancers. And you can see that evidence very clearly laid out in the Mounting Evidence Against Meat podcast that I did. However, it wasn't saying that you can't eat meat. It was saying that you can't make your diet more than essentially 19% of that. So check that out. That's an in-depth show on that. And of course, if you don't agree with that, if you're already saying, no, that's not true, and you don't have real research behind it, just ask yourself, right? Because we're not there having the conversation. Just ask yourself, why am I so against what this person is saying? Do I hold any stake in the game of being right? Why do I have to be right on this when that might not be the best thing? That's how I look at things now, which is, again, a little different than I think from 10 years ago, or maybe a little bit longer than that. So today, though, I want to give the flip side because I do want to try to be as unbiased as possible. And that means that if you are on a low protein diet, there are certain signs and symptoms that you will begin to see if the protein is too low for your body from where you're at in life. So again, the more active you are, the more of a Vata-based body type, the more catabolic you are, the more breakdown, as you'll start to see in a moment, the more protein you actually need. Now, you do need to make sure that you can digest it, which for a lot of people means that you need to chew up that food really well, and that you might want to be doing something like a daily digestive enzyme, or you might want to be drinking that ginger tea with meals. And you might want to be doing maybe even a little bit of Bragg's apple cider vinegar in the future if you want, or some type of digestive bitter to help you break down that food a little bit better as well. Okay, so right now I want to go over what are some of those signs and symptoms. And I really like this little series. And these are real things that people begin to see beyond a lot of the lab testing that we talk about. So you know that I don't believe there's really anything better than lab testing, functional medicine lab testing. It's what gave me my answers. So you have to keep in mind, I'm coming from the perspective, I don't know where I'd be today if I had not found some what were called back then alternative medicine doctors. Now, I don't like the word alternative medicine because it means like it's like an alternative to real medicine, when that's kind of crazy. Alternative medicine is conventional medicine, in my opinion. I mean, it really is, because real medicine has been around for thousands of years. We know that. And again, look at every culture except for what we call modern medicine, which is today's medicine. But really, today's medicine is pharmaceuticals. So, I mean, if you want to consider pharmaceuticals medicine, well, then what were we given with everything before? You know, I mean, we were given all of the herbs and plants and fruits and seeds and all these things to be able to use as our own pharmacopoeia. And so it's crazy to say that that's medicine when it's only been around for 100, 150 years maximum. If you wanted to really make that case, I would really only make a case for about 100 years. So in all of human evolution and history, a couple million years, we'll say, we have pharmaceuticals as a tiny fraction of that. Now, am I against it? Absolutely not. Because a lot of people would not be here today if they didn't have some of those life-saving pharmaceuticals. Now, remember, I'm saying that from an unbiased perspective. There are times when you need pharmaceuticals, and I'm actually very grateful and lucky and happy that we have amazing hospitals and amazing doctors in acute medical care that can help someone when they're having a heart attack or stroke, or they've gotten a staph infection. I actually got blood poisoning. I got an infection from a cut on my knee when I was about 8 years old or so. And I would have died if there was not pharmaceutical-based intervention. So there's no doubt about that I had actually an infection line running up my leg that would have eventually made its way to my heart. So am I grateful for conventional medicine? Of course. But remember, that's acute-based care. Whenever there's a life-saving condition, you should see your doctor. You should go to your walk-in clinic, emergency room, etc. Huge believer in that. You should have a PCP that's looking at your overall disease-less state. But you really want to be working with a health coach, a functional medicine doctor, a naturopathic doctor, an integrative health practitioner, someone that understands the total perspective. And nutrition, which we're talking about today, is at the top of that hierarchy. You have to be eating for your overall wellness and health. And when protein goes too low, you're going to see these signs we're going to talk about right now. So that first sign is going to be weak, or let's go with muscle weakness is the first place that I want to start, okay? So a loss of strength. Now, if you're not going to the gym, if you haven't been a person that exercises regularly anyways, you might not notice this as much, except that carrying your groceries, your bags, and I know we have like home delivery now, so we do less of that, but your everyday activities, maybe picking up your kids or grandkids or whatever, if that starts to feel more challenging, you're losing strength. Okay. But the next one goes right along with this is losing muscle. I'm going to be doing a specific show just on this alone, but people are losing muscle every single year and not even knowing it. And it's because when they step on the scale, basically the same weight, maybe just a little bit more. And I'll be doing a show on that as well. But here's the problem. And it's been proven. Women over the age of 27 and men aren't too far behind. They lose about 5 pounds or more per decade. That means that a half a pound a year doesn't seem like that much. They're losing a muscle mass, but it adds up. By the time that woman, and men as well, no doubt about it, men losing their legs and their arms and their belly starts to get bigger, or the torso starts to get bigger. And we see a lot of times in women, we see hips start to put on a little bit of body fat, triceps start to put on a body fat. It's why that's where we test. That's where we do our Jackson Pollock skin fold caliper testing as well. It's a little bit different for men than women too. So here's the thing though. When that 27-year-old female hits 57 years old, she's lost more than 15 pounds of muscle mass. That dictates her metabolism, is dictating a lot of neurotransmitter production, it's dictating cellulite increases, all of those things. Because the body, and we're talking about like dry weight, dry muscle weight, that is a lot of muscle to lose. All of that is what typically would take a lot of that sarcoplasm, that water, those nutrients taken in, hydration. We have a lot of elderly people who are dehydrated. One is they're not drinking a lot of water. That thirst, that indicator isn't there as much. And also the muscle mass isn't there to hold that water as well. So it's super important that we look at both of those. Loss of strength, first sign you're losing muscle or you're not getting enough protein. And then also muscle mass loss. If your body doesn't look as toned as it used to, you might be losing muscle mass. Check out my previous shows on how to take your body fat percentage. And you can type in body fat caliper if you want, and those shows will pop up. Because what you'll do is you'll find out what body fat percentage you're at now. You can begin a training program with a good personal trainer or online program, whatever you'd like to do, and start to put on some muscle mass. You'll see the body fat start to go down as well. That's a great thing because the body will look more toned, but more importantly, you're going to be stronger. You're going to be healthier. And you're going to have better immunity. So let's move into that next. We'll stick with the skin, then we'll move into the immunity in just a second. So here's the thing. A lot of people who aren't taking in enough protein, they're on too low a protein diet for them. And I'll tell you how much you need towards the end of the show. Their skin's going to start to look thinner. It's going to start to be a little bit more flaky. There's going to be a little bit more wrinkles. You can see fine lines. All of this, yes, it can be from a part of the aging process, part of skin or sun damage, all of those things. However, the body won't bounce back if there's not enough protein, amino acids, keratin production, collagen, all of these things that our body needs. Vitamin C, we talk about that all the time, zinc. And so we need these for our skin. So that's why it's just so important that you get all of your minerals on a daily basis. You get your vitamins on a daily basis. We're huge proponents of doing a smoothie in the morning. We'll talk about that more towards the end too. But it's easy to digest protein and amino acids and vitamins and minerals and all that good stuff. But remember, your skin, the outside of your body, the health of your internal body is oftentimes reflected on the external, the outside of the body. Really important to look at. So really important. Check that out as well. The next part I wanted to talk about is weakened immunity. I am a huge proponent of this. When I see people who can't recover and they're always getting sick, I look for too much processed food, too much sugar, and not enough protein. And a lot of times you'll see that sugar feeds viruses. It feeds all the pathogens in the body, whether it be the bacterial overgrowth, the candida overgrowth. It can feed viruses like I spoke about before. So we want to make sure we're not doing that, but we want to get good quality protein in. And that's going to help our white blood cells. It's going to help our overall immunity. And that will help cut down on the amount of frequent colds and your inability to recover. So if you find yourself taking a long time to recover from colds, now, of course, these can be multiple things, but check your protein. And if your protein isn't where it should be, then it could be from your lowered protein diet. Okay, the next one I'm going to go over is going to be a lowered mood. This is huge as well. One, because protein is going to help with neurotransmitter production. Protein is going to help get you those B vitamins and a lot of the other nutrients you need to feel good, to feel energized, to feel happy. So a lowered mood is a possibility for many, many things, of course, but a low protein diet is a big one. Okay, not feeling satiated. Spoke about this just last week with one of my wellness clients. And I said this, if you're still feeling hungry 1 hour after lunch or 1 hour after dinner, look at that meal. And I did a show on this as well, previous podcast on that. I hope you tune back into it. The number one go-to for me, if someone's not feeling satiated within an hour of eating, not enough protein. It could be carbs. There's no doubt about that. It could be fat, without a doubt. But I'll tell you, 8 out of 10 times, the majority of those times, is not that the person didn't eat enough food, but they didn't have enough protein. You need protein as the highest thermogenic food, hardest to break down, slowest to break down and metabolize for a reason. It will keep you feeling fuller longer. This is super important. A lot of people, when they eat just a high carb, straight carb meal, they ate plenty of calories. They did. But the problem is, it moved through them really quick. And that's because if you check out my food combining shows, sugar, fruit, all of those things is going to move through you in just about 20 minutes to maybe 30 minutes. If you are having just a starchy type meal, just for the most part starch, it's going to be about an hour. That is not a lot of time. But protein is going to be 1 to 3 hours, sometimes even more if someone has weakened digestion. So I'm always saying this, if you are hungry within an hour of eating, add more protein to the meal before and see if that does the trick. 8 times out of 10, I'll tell you from my practice, you'll see that it does. Okay, next one, super important. If you do not see yourself healing from cuts and wounds and other types of injuries like that within a couple days basis, you may not be getting enough glutamine, amino acids, and other nutrients that your body needs from protein. Super important to look at. And if that's the case, don't just supplement with extra glutamine. Nothing wrong with that, but don't just do that. Go for the whole spectrum itself. So go for the full protein itself and all the amino acids. All right. And the last one I want to bring you is this. This is more of a medical, and I did this last week for dehydration as well. But oftentimes you will see people for unexplained reasons. They don't always know why. Like, why are my wrists and fingers swollen? Why are my ankles swollen? And a lot of people on a lower protein diet will oftentimes get edema and swelling of those joints and external or further distal-based extremities for a reason, and joints. And here's why. Although we don't fully know for sure, we do know that albumin and other markers for protein may help keep the fluid inside of the muscle themselves and the tissue itself rather than the fluid moving externally or interstitial or extracellular. So although it's not set in stone, we do know that some people on a lower protein diet can have more edema. Now, keep in mind, you can have edema for many reasons: cardiovascular issues, kidney issues, lymphatic buildup, etc. But it's one more reason I wanted to, or one more sign or symptom that is associated with a low protein diet. So now the question is, how much protein should you be eating? And that's a great question. I did a podcast. I've done a few. What is today? Let's see what today's podcast show number is. So head on over for all of today's show notes to stevencabral.com/1146. On today's show, I will talk about, I'll give you many of the links there, but you'll also be able to go back to stevencabral.com/podcast and check out previous podcasts. There's another one besides the mountain evidence against meat, besides the carnivore-based diet, besides last week's dehydration-based diet. Check out also how much protein do you need. I did a whole podcast on this, and I would love you to check that out as well. So I've gone back and forth because the typical recommendation that's now been holding up for about 30 years is 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight. But that's not an easy equation to do in your head. It really isn't, right? Like, and here in the US, people don't even know what a kilogram is, and only reason I know about a kilogram, honestly, yes, they teach in school, but nobody remembers because they don't need to use it because they're from the US. And we in the US like to think that we are we're the center of the world, right? All kidding aside, I learned what a kilogram was because of weightlifting and personal training, and it's 2.2 pounds per kilogram. But let's make this easier. Besides all of our European friends, Australian friends, this is an easier way of doing it. Take your body weight. All right. And you could even look at your ideal body weight. That would be fine. Ideal body weight, and take half of that. That's it. So it makes it much, much easier because the average person is going to need between 0.5 grams and 1 gram per pound of body weight. So all I want you to do is take your body weight and take half of that and eat that in grams per day. It's the same recommendation I give you for water and hydration, which makes it super easy. So let's do real world math here. You weigh 160 pounds. Well, let's just throw that out there. We'll give a couple examples. If you weigh 160 pounds, you need 80 ounces of water per day. That equals 10 glasses. Okay? Super simple. Or 5 of those small 16 or so ounce water bottles. If you weigh 160 pounds, you need about 80 grams of protein per day. Okay. So what does that mean? Well, it means if you're eating 4 meals per day, you're going to split that 80 over 4 and you get 20. You'll see my podcast of me recommending why 3 meals per day. So check out my podcast on 3 meals per day. The majority of people in my practice, about 9 out of 10, are doing 3 meals per day. And I would really love you to check out that show because it talks about blood sugar and hormonal balance and burning body fat by getting the blood sugar low between meals, et cetera, right? Autophagy, et cetera. So check out that show. But this makes it much easier. Let's say you weigh 120 pounds. Well, you need about 60 grams of protein per day. And that's an easier way of looking at it. That's about 20 grams or so per meal. If you weigh 200 pounds, you need about 100 per day. But if you weigh 200 pounds and your goal is to weigh 160 pounds, you really need about 80 grams of protein per day. Now, you can do a little bit less, you can do a little bit more. And remember, these aren't steadfast numbers for hydration or protein. These are starting numbers. Let's say that you work in a tropical climate and you sweat a lot during the day. Well, you're going to need more water than someone living in Boston in the winter where they're not sweating basically at all, unless they're going to the gym and purposely sweating, right? So there's huge differences and there always will be. But you need a foundation. You need a place to get started. So people can always be naysayers and say your vitamin C level shouldn't be here, your vitamin D levels. You can always say those things. Remember, but only lab testing tells you specifically. So for example, for this, to see if you're more catabolic, you could run a hair tissue mineral analysis. You could run an organic acids test to look at digestion. And that's called our starter kit. That's a great place to start as well. What is today? I'm looking at this, recording a couple days in advance. So we are still going on this week, and this is, again, this isn't right for everybody, but if it's right for you and you're looking to get at that deepest level of what your body needs, you are welcome to lab test this week. And the reason why I'm saying this week is that until Friday or Saturday, which will be April 1st, right before April 1st, so I believe March, right around the 30th, we are offering 10% off labs. So again, I don't know if it's the right fit for you or not, but head on over to equilibriumnutrition.com. Check out the labs tab, just if you want to save a little bit money, if you are interested in that. I run my labs this time of the year. That's why we're offering it to others as well. But let's move back to the protein equation as well. So if you're already eating that much protein, but you're someone that's very active, you're more of a Pitta or Vata-based body type, and you feel like you're kind of, a lot of those symptoms are you might need to add a little bit more. That's why I'm not saying that this is steadfast. You need to find out the right amount for your body. If you're more of a Kapha body type, which means that you naturally put on more mass and muscle and you have larger calves and maybe ankles and you have larger arms already, you just might not need as much protein, which is more of an anabolic food. But for most people, let's keep it simple. About half your body weight or just a little bit less in grams of protein per day. Now, it's super easy to get though, and that's why I work with clients and they're not getting it. And the reason is that they've taken the plant-based diet maybe too much to heart. And I'm a huge advocate. And I work with a lot of people that are vegan. And for the most, vegan is not just a diet. So people have to understand that vegan is a lifestyle. It's a commitment to being gentler in life in general. And that means to animals and really not taking another life or any of those things, which I totally understand and get that and support that. But what happens is a lot of people fall into vegan-based lifestyle and it works out for the first couple months or 6 months or a year, and they start to feel weaker and lower mood. And people just say, oh, you're having Herxheimer reactions, which actually was yesterday's show. And they're not. They're actually now becoming too catabolic. Now, you can still be vegan. You just have to follow something like the nutrition plan I'm about to give you right now. So for example, you could do something like a morning smoothie that we recommend with a daily nutritional support powder or your favorite all-in-one powder that provides a vegan-based protein. And you can get 15 grams or 20 grams of protein just from that. So it's super easy to do. And remember, if you're someone that's more, you're prone more to losing weight, you add a little bit of oatmeal, well, you're going to get another 5 grams or so. Now you're above 20 grams of protein with a smoothie and a little bit of oatmeal. Easy. All right, that's done. Breakfast is done. You can put in your fruit there, your veggies, whatever you love. And then you want to do a vegan-based or plant-based lunch like I do for the most part. Then you can get your sweet potatoes. You could do a rice bowl if you'd like. You can put some veggies in there. You can put a half an avocado or some olive oil, and then add 3 tablespoons of hemp hearts. There's 15 grams of protein right there. Easy. And then with your sweet potatoes and other things too, that's going to give you typically another 4 or 5 grams. Now you're at 20 grams right there. Super easy. So now with breakfast, we have 20 grams. Lunch, we have 20 grams. Now we're at 40 grams already for the day. If you just need 60, you can just get 20 grams at dinner. If you need a little bit more, you can add a little bit more. But remember, just 4 ounces of fish. Now, again, you could do lentils or dal or whatever you want if you're on a vegan-based diet. But if you want to do fish at dinner, or you want to do turkey, or you want to do something like that, 4 ounces, typically it's a multiple of 6 grams of protein per ounce. So you're looking at 24 ounces. Now, again, when you add other foods to that, there's typically protein in other foods as well. But let's just look at our protein. That's 24 grams in just a tiny amount of fish. 4 ounces of fish is a tiny amount. Most people are going to eat more like 6 or 8 ounces. You don't need to eat all that. Multiply 6 by 6, you get 36 grams and 6 ounces of protein right there. So I'll typically do somewhere around that. I get 36 grams of protein right there. That's plenty satiated. I don't feel like I need to snack after dinner. I don't need the sweets, all those types of things. And if I got 40 and I just added 36 at dinner, I'm at 76 for the day, right? So it's super easy. Like, you can do this without a lot of effort. You can stay predominantly plant-based if you choose to, and you can give yourself all the protein that your body needs. So hopefully this has been helpful. I do recommend checking out those previous podcasts if you do get a moment to listen to those. And as I always say, if this information was helpful, please do feel free to pass along to anyone else you believe it could serve. I want to sincerely thank you for your support of this podcast. I couldn't do it without you, and I mean that. I truly do. I also want to make sure you knew that we now have multiple ways for you to find your answers to the most difficult health, wellness, weight loss, and anti-aging questions. You can find podcast-specific topics like thyroid, adrenal, hormones, sleep, digestion, Ayurveda, and many more at stevencabral.com/podcasts that will then link you to your favorite Apple, Spotify, and other podcast players. Plus, all new podcasts and weekly exclusive video content is being added to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Stephen Cabral. And that's Stephen with a PH. Head on over and subscribe so that you don't miss any of the exclusive content. Lastly, if you've ever found any of my podcasts or books to be helpful, I would really appreciate it if you could leave a review on iTunes or your favorite media player for the podcast. Rating and subscribing to the YouTube and podcast allow me to reach more and more people and help spread my mission of healing throughout the world. Thank you again for being a part of this movement.